Exactly 96 years ago today, billions of dollars were wiped out as the Dow plunged. Investors gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange as many of them lost everything. Some called it the darkest day in American history. October 29th, 1929 became known as Black Tuesday, a key date in the stock market crash that sunk our country into a depression. As we mentioned earlier, that crash is the subject of a new book by my friend Andrew Ross Sorkin. It is called 1929, and it is already a New York Times bestseller. Our nightcap is still here. Take us there. 1929, this is the most famous financial event in our country's history. It took you 8 years to write this book.
It did take me 8 years to write this book. And the truth is, you just asked me off camera, did I think that when I was writing this book originally, that I was, the parallels with today? And the truth was, I was not thinking about that. But today, the parallels between what was happening then and what's happening now is quite remarkable.
Explain it, because we all forget history.
So, the 1920s were this transformational, era. Technology, you had automobiles, you had technology, you had telecommunications, radio, all of these things. Very much, by the way, like AI today. The meme stock of that era was RCA, radio, the same way it would be like NVIDIA. And CEOs are all of a sudden, really for the first time actually in history, becoming, magazine cover stars. I mean, this is when the celebrity era of business, if you will. The American dream, I would argue, even changed. And it was all powered by leverage, by debt, by borrowing. It was really the first time in America. It was a moral sin to actually take a mortgage prior to 1920. People just didn't do that. You were the low of the low if you took a mortgage. And everybody started taking on debt. And frankly, the Wall Street bankers, led by a guy named Charlie Mitchell, who ran a bank called National City, which becomes Citigroup, was the leader of this. He thought that you needed to demystify the stock market. You needed to sell stock like neckties. That's what we used to say. Sell it like a necktie. And you had people who would be walking into brokerage houses all over the country playing the markets. It became a national pastime. And it really was this euphoric moment about the future. And it's very much, in a way, when we talk about AI right now and the sort of the euphoria in the stock market, that the whole world is about to change. It's about to transform. And that was the feeling in the 1920s.
But isn't that, I mean, you mentioned AI, that is where we are.
That is where we are.
This big debate that AI could be transforming the way we live in every possible way, that it's this extraordinary new frontier, or it's just overblown and the market's going to turn, or it's the Death Star that's going to take us down as this unregulated new frontier with a president who is surrounded right now by tech CEOs who I would argue are playing him.
And that's the fundamental question. What are we about to see in the future? And by the way, all of the spending back in the 1920s was somewhat indiscriminate, and all the spending that's being spent now is indiscriminate. And all of it was in the context, by the way, for investors, for the investor class, and for the public, for ordinary Americans, there was this idea of democratizing finance, that we all were going to be part of it for the first time. And so now you have everybody on their phone right now on Robinhood playing the markets, buying crypto, buying into all of these things, meme coins, all of that.
Individual investors in private markets.
It's that same idea that if I can just figure out a way, I too can become a millionaire. And it isn't about blood, sweat, and tears or the reward of hard work, right? That is still so part of American mythology in this fascinating way. And yet along that way, similarly as we have now, millions of people are outside of that economy. There are millions of people who don't understand AI, are going to have their jobs impacted. You have Anthropic CEO saying white-collar jobs are going to bottom out, especially entry-level. So good luck for those of us in higher education who are trying to train a new workforce.
Yeah, I read this book. It reads like a novel. Some of these characters that he just mentioned, so this Charles Mitchell, okay? There is a Charles Mitchell of this time. I'm going to let you say who it is, Andrew, because it's pretty fascinating. This guy has got... He's the puppet master right now of this entire economy, of this entire stock market.
Who do you think he is?
I think it's the CEO of NVIDIA. That would be Jensen Huang. I mean, like, literally, I'm reading this book.
Hold on, do you agree?
That's interesting. It could be. It could be. I was going to say, as a banker, he was as famous as, like, Jamie Dimon would be today. No question. But in terms of sort of the they called him Sunshine Charlie. Always had a smile
Jamie
on his
Dimon,
face.
you mean building his gilded fortress right on Park Avenue?
But I think Jamie's actually much more conservative. I
That's
think
where I
Jensen
gotta go.
Huang
Yeah.
is the one who is the Sunshine Charlie of our time.
So I've been in the markets for nearly 30 years, okay? And, you know, this 1929 crash is the thing that's been hanging out in the background. And so I remember the dot-com bubble and how it burst. There was a lot of different, you know, like a lot of very similar things. And then what happened into the financial crisis, a lot of similar things. What's happening now is dwarfing them. When this thing crashes, okay, it's going to crash. When this thing crashes, it's going to be like mashing up the dot-com thing with the financial crisis because this is so much larger. We have 7 stocks that are $22 trillion in market cap. And just do the math. We just said before, we have a $30 trillion GDP. And you were talking about debt to GDP, market cap to GDP is going to be important.
Arthur?
I look at this whole thing from the lens of a behavioral scientist. And I think that the 1929 crash was the culmination of the self-improvement movement in America. And that's the parallel with today.
Oh, educate us.
Yeah, so after the Civil War, there was this huge amount of belief that America was not going to last. I mean, it's like the paroxysm that was the Civil War meant that this was like, it's just a matter of time before this whole thing breaks apart. And it didn't, because there was this huge, everything from the temperance movement to the Mormons to all these evangelical tent revivals and, Andrew Carnegie and Dale Carnegie and all these things. You can build your life with the whole idea of the American as an individual entrepreneur. You incorporated. All that stuff was after the Civil War, between the Civil War and the First World War, and this optimism. That's when we have this idea of the frontier American spirit. Go west, young man. All that stuff came after the Civil War. And the top of it was when people started to say, and I can be a millionaire too, but I can only do it through speculation.
But I would tell you that the American dream, I think, actually shifted in the 1920s. So I think there was almost a Horatio Alger dream prior to that. There was this sort of rags to riches dream.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think the 20s became the lottery ticket dream. Yep. It became what's now on your infinite scroll on Instagram and TikTok. It is the dream, unfortunately. The get-rich-quick fantasy.
Yeah, except that's not the whole country. This is the interesting thing. The frontier spirit, the individual entrepreneur of You Incorporated, that has existed. That's still here. That's a wonderful thing. But there's always a cheesy version of it, or the easy version of it, the prosperity gospel version of it.
Yes.
And the way that you get that is through speculation.
Yeah, there's another thing, though. If prohibition wasn't going on right now and these people could have drank, I mean, my goodness, I don't think it would have happened like this, okay? But the other thing is, I'll just say...
The Oak Room Bar in the Plaza Hotel in 1929 was turned into an E.F. Hutton. People would go in there and trade stock.
Here's what makes this moment so much worse than the Gilded Age and all the corrections of social safety net that came after to make sure people, weren't starving in the street. That AI is not just a speculation technology advancement. It is a social change as well. Dramatically changes how we interact with each other. I compare it to the iPhone. If everyone's iPhone suddenly just died and we couldn't functionally use one anymore, everything about how we communicate, that was a changing
well, that was the
functional
same as the
social
internet,
technology.
And so that's where a lot of these comparisons come in.
But you take both of that at the same time.
Yeah, but they took 10 years apart. I mean, the thing is that, we had a misallocation of resources. That will be the thing.
But AI is not 10 years away from what's going on with the market right now.
I'm not talking about, so the technology is very different than what's going on in the financial markets. And I think that's what this book is about.
But I'll tell you one other thing that I worry about with the AI piece that relates to this. In success with AI, if all of these companies actually grow into these valuations, which I think some people think are overvalued now, it means they have to create extraordinary productivity. What does that actually mean? Productivity is a euphemism for taking cost out. Where is that cost? That cost is us around this table.
Just
everybody
today,
watching.
It is
just
an
today,
entire
on
generation.
CNBC, Gary Cohn was talking about all these layoffs we've seen in the last week. And he said, no. This isn't a downturn. This is companies, they overhired and now they're just getting more efficient.
That's right.
Well, if AI is efficient in the way it wants to be, we're heading to the Jetsons.
Yeah, what happens is, and this is an important thing to understand historically about the way technology changes labor markets. Okay, so look back a little bit. A skilled job has about 40 discrete tasks in it. A big technological change takes all the tasks and mixes them up and is 40 new tasks in the new job. And there's usually a few years of real pain. And that's what we're about to face. Yes. That's what's happening. Now, here's my big worry about AI, however. And it might play, and I'd love to hear if you think this has a historical precedent to it. AI, the way that people are using it, is all wrong, not just for their money, but for their happiness.
Tell us.
Here's why. AI is, so your brain is hemispherically lateralized. That means the right and left hemisphere do two different things. The left side is all your tasks and efficiency and analysis. The right side is the mystery and the meaning and happiness. The meaning of life is on the right side of the brain. People are using AI to try to find meaning in their life, and they're not going to find it. It's a left hemisphere tool. You should use it to actually answer questions that are tasks, and then free up your time and go spend it with your loved ones and go to church or whatever you do to find meaning in your life. But they're using it for their lover and their friend and their therapist, and that's where the money's going to be, and that's going to ruin our lives.
That is the social change I'm talking about. That is the fundamental shift of how we use technology.
Back in 1929, people would go visit with a woman named Evangeline Adams. She was an astrologer. And you would
She was the Miss Cleo of 1929.
She was based on 57th Street in Carnegie Hall. And you would go visit with her, and she would tell you about your own happiness and about whether to buy stock in the stock market.
What happened to her?
She lost all her money. See, I really read this.
She lost all.
By the way, people like even J.P. Morgan, who was no longer alive in 1920, used to literally go visit with her. I mean, everybody in town would go visit with her. It was extraordinary.
And
if she was alive today, there'd be a feature on Humans of New York all about her.